Well, hello everyone. Welcome to Squared Circle Radio. Welcome to our live reactions post Raw after WrestleMania. Don't adjust your TV screens. Don't adjust your computer monitors, your tablets, your phone, whatever you're watching this on. I am running solo tonight. My name is Andy York. I am the Young Buck. What a way to cap off WrestleMania weekend. We've got a lot of activity in the chat already. We've got a lot of opinions flying everywhere. There's a lot to dive into, a lot to talk about. Of course, we've got Aaron in the chat saying, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Monday Night Mid. Yeah, I tend to agree a little bit. We're going to dive in and talk about all of that as well. We're glad City Kitty is in the chat as well, asking why we have so much energy already. But hey, it's the Raw after Mania. There's a lot of attention. There's a lot of tension and hype after WrestleMania Night 1 and Night 2. And so there's a lot to dive in and to talk about. But again, welcome to Squared Circle Radio. If this is your first time joining us, make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, share this video with your friends. Make sure if you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts that you do all the things there as well, that you like it, or that you are subscribed to us, that you're sharing that as well. There's just a lot of things to dive in and talk about. And I mean, we have to talk about how the show went off the air tonight. I think we all were kind of expecting in some ways for Roman to kick off the show, but for him to come out last, got the Vegas crowd hot and ready for him as he came out. There's just a lot that happened. Not a lot of build throughout the show for things to come, but a lot of things happened as we kept going. But at the end of the day, Roman came out. Not only did he come out as the new World Heavyweight Champion, but he came out with the Usos by his side, with Jimmy and Jay. We saw them backstage in Gorilla as he was making his way out to the ring. He stopped for a second and then motioned for them to come out with him. And while he was in the ring, he basically just cut the promo of, listen, when we were running this show, when we were running this business, things were good. It's been, we ran it for 4 years, and it's been a while since we've been together. It's been a while since we've run this thing back, and it seems like the Bloodline, at least the original Bloodline, might be aligning for a while. We're going to talk about some ways that this can go and some areas and directions that this could lead to. But not really the promo I thought we were going to get from him. I mean, he didn't even mention Punk. He didn't even really mention the things that happened at WrestleMania or the build up to it. I mean, he was just focused on the family business. He was focused on everything that had happened within the Bloodline over the last couple of months. And so he kept that motion going. And the Usos right there with him. Big Jim cuts promo. I think it's very interesting that we only heard from Jimmy. We didn't hear from anyone else. We only heard from Big Jim the entire time. And I think that is a very interesting detail that we'll come back to and hit here in just a minute. But I think that, he is setting up. It seemed like the Bloodline is aligned. It seems like they're back with Roman. It seems like all is good. And just when we were trying to figure out, well, who's he facing? Where is this thing going? He is interrupted by none other than Jacob Fatu, who got the massive, massive win at WrestleMania against Drew McIntyre. And Jacob comes out and he makes it known to Roman, I don't just want that title. I want everything that comes with being the tribal chief. I want everything that comes with being the head of the table. I want everything that comes with being in that spot. I want the best for my kids, the most money I can get, the fancy house, all the cars. He cut this really impassioned promo about how he didn't just want to be World Heavyweight Champion. He needed to be World Heavyweight Champion. And so seemingly, obviously it wasn't confirmed tonight. Roman said to give him a week to really think about it. It seems like, though, at Backlash, we're getting a match that, a lot of speculation went into WrestleMania 41 of a possibility of a match that we would get there. But we're running back. We're running with Roman Reigns versus Jacob Fatu for that World Heavyweight Championship. I think it's a very interesting direction to go into. I think it's a very interesting way that they're handling it. And I just think the whole presentation of it tonight is really setting up things to come down the line. I would not be shocked if we get some twists and turns along the way. I was expecting it to happen tonight with it being the Raw after Mania, but there's a real possibility, there's a real chance that this ends with the Usos aligning either with Jacob or just straight up turning on Roman. I'm not saying Jacob's going to win the title at Backlash or anything like that. I think we're heading to another Roman versus Jay match, with the roles being reversed of Roman being the babyface this time, Jay being the heel. But we're using this Jacob match like a vehicle to get there, because it's going to be all about family. As City Kitty says in the chat, blood versus blood. And that's exactly what this is going to be. And it's a story that we have seen multiple times throughout this run of the Bloodline, that it's all about the family. It's all about, what is going on with the Bloodline, what's going on with the Samoan heritage and the Samoan dynasty. And Roman is right at the center of that, and Jacob has been added so heavily to it. And then you add the Usos into it as well. So there's a lot of different directions. There's a lot of different ways that this could go. I think it's very telling and very interesting that this is how we ended the show tonight. Obviously, there was a lot of speculation about how much will we see Roman. He said in the post game, on the post show, that he's going to be around for the whole summer. That this part time stuff is over. He's going to be here for the whole summer. So maybe we get more than one match against him and Jacob. I don't know how I feel about throwing Jacob right to Roman right away, because I mean, there's really not a chance that Jacob probably walks away with the World Heavyweight Championship. So you got to be careful about how you handle it, because even tonight when he was in the ring with Roman, there's a lot of Fatu chants. There's a lot of hype around Jacob. When his music hit, the place, the crowd was very shocked that he was the one coming out to challenge Roman. And so I don't know how I feel about putting him in this situation right away, without damaging or hurting the character in some ways. But I think it was a very electric night, a very electric way to end the night. We're getting more Bloodline stuff. I feel like we're in a time loop again, going back to 2021, 2022. But it was the best story during the biggest peak of the business. And so I think it's no wonder why they ran back to it. No wonder why they went back to this. But I mean, it is a big time match. Obviously, you're getting Roman, you're getting Jacob. But there's a lot of ways that this can go. And I'm sure as we get closer and closer, and the more we talk about it, the closer we get to it, we'll be breaking it down more and more. But I'm intrigued. I'm very intrigued by this. This is not, I don't think anybody really thought that this was going to be a direction we go with Roman right after he won the world title. But I think it's a very intriguing one, to say the least. Speaking of the World Heavyweight Championship, it seems like we're either getting a preview of what's to come very soon, or we're getting a preview of what potentially could be one of the main events of WrestleMania next year. And of course, I am talking about CM Punk and Cody Rhodes. Tonight, Punk was in the ring cutting a very passionate promo again, about how he's faced so much loss over the last 6 months or so. And he's faced so much adversity. And he knows he can bounce back. He quickly squashed the rumors and the idea that he was going to take some time away, to go on a vacation. But as he's cutting this promo, he clearly says more than once, the reason why he's not going anywhere is he wants to make sure he stays around, because you never know when you're going to get another title opportunity that falls out of the sky. Talking about how when Seth got hurt, he was the man to step up and win the World Heavyweight Championship. And basically, as soon as he finished that line and was getting ready to leave the ring, of all people's music to hit, Cody Rhodes' music hit, and out comes the WWE champion. I'm going to talk about that for a second. I'm going to talk about the promo between the two. I want to go back, though, because I do have a slight problem with seeing Cody 2 days after his match with Randy, because we have built up the hype so much, not just wrestling fans, because I know that's a whole discussion about the expectation of wrestling fans, and we build things up in our mind that was never part of the plan or never an intention by the company. But WWE has built up the idea of how big the punt really is, like how big of a deal the punt is, for people to see, and for it to be a career ender almost, or to have you be stretchered out, or to be a lot of pain and take you out for a while. And then after WrestleMania night 1 ended, the post show was going on there. I think Jackie Redmond that was on the ramp and just casually walking behind her. is Cody Rhodes, and I think right there a lot of people went, so we're not selling the punt like it should be, or we're not telling the story of the punt. And then tonight he just is casually. I mean, he was limping a little bit. Obviously, his eye was jacked up. I mean, it looked horrible from the punch that he took and from the punt that he took because it was the same side. But he walks out. They don't even mention the punt. They don't even mention anything about that. But the promo and the idea that we could get Punk versus Cody at any point in time, I think is so interesting because it's one of the things that we talked about going into WrestleMania this year. Of if there is there another match that would have taken the place of a Punk versus Reigns, and I think the only one that could have reached that level could have been Punk versus Cody. And so it seems like we are going to be getting that at some point. Now, I don't think it's going to be the first feud right out of the gate for Cody. I don't think it's going to be the first feud that we see for the WWE Championship. I would be shocked if we don't see it until like WrestleMania time next year. Maybe the Rumble is when that starts to pick back up. But I do think we are heading towards a CM Punk versus Cody Rhodes match for the WWE Championship. And I think the stories of how we can get there are so intriguing, are so interesting because they have such a long history together of not just their time in WWE, but both of them being in AEW for a time period. Cody being the guy to start AEW, Punk being the guy to try to kill it from the inside out is what it seemed like. And now they're both back in WWE and both at the top of their game in WWE. And so I think it's a very intriguing matchup to have Cody and Punk, at least tease the idea of this match. Now, do we actually get it? That's another discussion for another day. That's something we can talk about. But I don't think we're going to get it anytime soon. I think if the earliest we'll probably get it is SummerSlam. We're probably not going to see it, though, until WrestleMania time next year. But I think it's an interesting one. I think it's a very interesting one to see. Chris mentioned it last night of, are we going to see Punk win another world title? I think if we're going with this route, I think he has a real good chance to beat Cody. I think he has a real good chance to take Cody out and to win the WWE Championship. Aaron said, did we think Cody was coming out to vacate, or was that just me? I thought there was a chance. I mean, he did not come out like the normal Cody Rhodes. I think that is kind of maybe the story they're trying to tell with the punt that he took of maybe it knocked a lot out of him, or the fact that he, the whole feud itself messed with him mentally, and he was wrestling more like a heel in the match and was, 2 years ago against Cena, he wasn't aggressive enough to win it. This year, he was definitely aggressive enough and got the win, but it cost him at the end of the day anyway. He seemed very dejected. He seemed like he was, probably. I mean, he had the mindset, or he had the temperament that he was coming out to vacate the title. But I do think, we're planting even more of the seeds for a character change, and I think I go back to his WrestleMania entrance of showing the different eras of Cody. I think we're unlocking or entering into a new era where maybe he embraces the heel side more, or he's not as buddy with the crowd anymore. He's doing whatever it takes to keep that championship. He's doing whatever it takes to stay on top. He's becoming desperate with it. He's sick of losing all his friends because he lost Kevin Owens. He lost Randy Orton. It seems now like he's starting to lose Sami Zayn even more. So I think that plays a lot into it. I think that's such an interesting way to go with him. But he definitely did seem like he was coming out to, if not vacate the title, at least play up the injury a little bit more. And then it was never mentioned and never brought up again. But the question was posed: do we think Punk will ever win another championship or another world title in WWE? I think there's a good chance in this feud with Cody. Whenever this match happens, we're probably going to get more than one. I do think there's a really good chance he does dethrone Cody and wins the WWE Championship and runs it back one more time with that title. But it's very interesting to see that that's what we're getting. I mean, coming out of WrestleMania, who would have thought the two world title pictures that we're seeing now is Roman Reigns versus Jacob Fatu for the World Heavyweight Championship, and then on the other side, Cody Rhodes versus CM Punk for the WWE Championship. That seems to be the massive main direction that we're going with. But those aren't the two things that a lot of people are going to be talking about coming off of this year's WrestleMania, coming off of the Raw after Mania, because we have to talk about the new ruler of WWE. We have to talk about the man that put the beast to bed, at least for now. We have to talk about the man that has taken WWE by storm. And we're talking about Oba Femi. Now, it's one thing to be over with the crowd. It's one thing to have a dominant performance at WrestleMania. It's one thing to carry yourself at the manner that he does. But before they even started anything on Raw, like after they did the video package recapping WrestleMania and they did all of that, the whole crowd was doing nothing but chanting for Oba. And then while Roman is cutting his promo tonight, at one point you hear nothing but the Oba chants starting to break out again. So I know it's the inevitable, and I know when we talked about it a couple weeks ago or last week, Chris had a lot of concerns, not necessarily concerns, but had a lot of trepidation about putting Oba in this spot so soon. I think that's a very valid concern to have. I think Oba has proven himself, though, not just being over with the crowd, his moveset, the way he moves in the ring, the promo he cuts, how charismatic he is. I think we're strapping the rocket to his back. I think he's going all the way to the top. I'm making my prediction now. The person to dethrone Roman Reigns and win that World Heavyweight Championship, I believe, is Oba Femi. And I believe it's probably going to happen closer to the end of the year. I don't think it's going to be in the next couple months. But it's interesting. We didn't set up a direction for him to go. I mean, we didn't set anything up for him to go. All we got tonight was after the music stopped and he was in the ring and the crowd was done chanting his name for, 2 or 3 minutes. All he said was the ruler has arrived and dropped the mic and just stood there and aura formed and got the big moment, got the crowd's reaction. And a star has been born in WWE. I think a lot of people saw this writing on the wall as he's coming out of NXT. When he was having that Saturday night's main event match with Cody, and the crowd was so heavily behind him. And then the build to the Rumble of, he wasn't even really showing up that much he wasn't even showing up on TV, and the Rumble pop that he got. And then he started to show up after the Rumble and just was squashing dudes left and right, and the people were going crazy for it. They have a star in Oba Femi. And a lot of the concern was that they were going to do what they have done before and squash that with Brock and have Brock beat the young and up-and-coming guy because he can eat the pin and he can eat the defeat and crawl his way back to the top. Sometimes, though, you just have to catch lightning in a bottle and just let it go. And I think that is absolutely what they're doing with Oba. I think he's going right to the top. I'm curious to see where he goes from here. I don't think he needs to go after a mid-card title. I don't think he needs to go after, anything else. I think he just needs to have a couple of feuds between here and whenever he fights Roman for the title, but really continue the rise of Oba, continue to build him up more and more and more. I don't know who necessarily throw him in there with right away. I don't know who you throw him in there with right away to have a massive feud with or a lengthy feud. An obvious one that could potentially happen at some point is Gunther. He made it known tonight he was going after the world title at some point. But Gunther being upset that Oba was the one to retire Brock or potentially retire Brock, I think that is a direction they can go. But then, you look at Oba versus Bron Breakker, Oba versus Seth Rollins. Whenever Drew McIntyre comes back from shooting the movie, he's got a lot of beef with Drew after the way Saturday night's main event ended against Cody. So I think there's a lot of ways that they can go with Oba. But at the end of the day, Oba Femi is probably the biggest star in WWE right now. In a world full of Roman Reigns' and CM Punk's and Cody Rhodes, who, by the way, all three were on the show tonight, and not one of them got a bigger reaction than Oba Femi. And I think that is very telling about where that young man's career is going to go. And I think it's very exciting to see that. But on the Raw after Mania, we're used to surprises. We're used to debuts. We're used to returns. Um, Obviously, the big return of the weekend goes to Paige coming back at WrestleMania, winning the women's tag title. She was in the crowd tonight. Royce Keys was in the crowd tonight. Trick Williams with the U.S. Championship was in the crowd tonight, and he looked phenomenal with that championship. But one of the other things that we're used to seeing, and we got it again tonight, is NXT call-ups, and we got a couple of them tonight. But I'm just going to flash this picture up because I think it kind of embodies everything. We saw 3 call-ups tonight that are going to be on Monday Night Raw. I expect more Friday. I'll talk about those here in a minute. Ethan Page showed up backstage in a segment with Penta and Javon Evans and made it known that he wants to go after the Intercontinental Championship, and when he wants something, he gets it. Adam Pearce put them in a match later on in the night where Ethan Page got the win thanks to a distraction from Rusev. But having Ethan Page on the main roster, I think, is such a win. He is a great heel character. He'll be able to get a lot of heat. He is a much better version, and I know Chris is going to love this, so whenever he's on next week, he can rag me for it. He's a much better version of The Miz, and so I think he's going to do great things on the main roster. I think he's going to be such a great heel for baby faces to go after, and so I think he's got a really big upside on the main roster. Another one that I think has another major upside that was there tonight was Sol Ruka. She came in, and not only did she come in, flashbacks to Paige, but she came in and went after the women's champion, Liv Morgan, who we'll talk about here in just a little bit. But her and Liv had a great match on Raw tonight. The only reason Liv won was because of Zara getting involved and costing Sol. They're going to have a match tomorrow night on NXT. Definitely Sol's swan song and ride off to send her off to the main roster. But putting her right in the world title picture, we talked about it all weekend, how the women's division on both Raw and SmackDown needed a massive boost. And I think someone like Sol Ruka can do that. Her moveset is unlike anything we've seen in the women's division, from the Soul Snatcher, which might be one of the coolest wrestling finishing moves of all time, to the way she got out of the Oblivion tonight by doing a handstand and flipping out of it, doing the cartwheel, handstand, whatever, reverse tope con hilo over the top rope, taking out Raquel and Roxanne. She's got such a unique look. She's got such a unique moveset. I think she has a big part to play in the women's division. And I think it started tonight, and I think we're going to get even more of it. And then at the end of the night, I wish she would have been on the show, but I kind of get why they did what they did. They just flashed up a graphic next week on Raw, making his Raw debut, and is going to be on Raw full time. We are getting a Joe Hendry concert, and I am so excited for that. I think he's going to be such a great addition to the Raw roster. You can kind of see the things now between Joe Hendry and Danhausen. Joe Hendry and, R-Truth even can have a lot of great moments back and forth whenever, they interact with SmackDown. But I think Joe Hendry can play a big part on the main roster, not just the comedy character, but he can also be serious and he can also be a threat. And so I think these are 3 really solid call-ups that Monday Night Raw really needed. I think a big one that we're probably going to see Friday is Ricky Saints showing up on SmackDown. I think that's kind of a no-brainer at this point. Maybe we see JC Jane show up on SmackDown as well, getting called up from NXT. So this is the time of year, one of the times of year where we see the call-ups start to happen. And it just kind of shifts everything in the division. It shifts everything on the main roster. But I think the 3 call-ups we saw tonight are going to have a big impact in their own way. Maybe not world champions, maybe not all the way to the top of the card, but they are going to play their part, and they're going to make a massive difference on the main roster. But we talked about it. We brought her up. The new WWE Women's World Champion, Liv Morgan, came out to the ring to gloat tonight to her new song, Trouble Trouble. That's going to be her new theme song, Walking Out. A kind of a mixed reaction for Liv as she got into the ring and started to cut her promo. The crowd were definitely not necessarily fully behind her side. I know she got a "You Deserve a" chant, but there was some boos during that I'm curious to see how the crowd's going to react to her more and more as time goes on as the women's champion. But she fought Sol Ruka tonight. She got the win thanks to the help of Judgment Day and Zara. But then whenever she's making her way back up, Stephanie Vakira's music hits again, and they go face to face. And I throw up this picture for a reason because I think the way they shot it, a lot of the times you see Raquel and you see Roxanne, they're normally standing behind Liv, or they're behind to where they're not normally going to be in their shot. I think they wanted to be in the middle and put them in the middle because I do think we're going to get a split at some point. I think we're going to get a split sooner rather than later between Raquel, Roxanne, and the Judgment Day. Part of me thought the way that everything was happening and the way that they looked tonight, that could have happened tonight. That Raquel and Roxanne could have turned on her there. But maybe that happens at Backlash. Maybe that happens, right after Backlash. They're going to make it known. I think we're going to head to a triple threat for the women's title between those three ladies at some point, probably sooner rather than later. But it seems like we're running this back. And I think it's a good thing because they had one of the best feuds heading into WrestleMania that had a lot of time put into it and everything, but they just weren't given a lot of time on the Mania card, which is another, gripe that a lot of people had with Mania this year. And I think even with the Raw after Mania. But I do think, we are going to run this back. I think it's going to be great for both of them. I think Stephanie has another chance to really prove herself even more. Liv has an opportunity to, show that she deserves to be the women's world champion. We also saw the backstage interaction between her and Rhea as Rhea is leaving tonight. So maybe we are running that back sometime soon. Both of them are the current WWE Women's Champion, the Women's World Heavyweight Champion. So just a lot of interesting areas and ways that we are heading post WrestleMania. We're getting some rematches. We're getting a lot of new feuds. We're getting a lot of new moments. They're planting the seeds for some heel turns. They're planting the seeds for some twists and some turns along the way. And I think that is, that's a really big part and a really big key to all of this and to everything that they're doing. And so I'm excited for, the direction that we're kind of heading in and the way that we're going. Another match that we're going to get, even though it technically didn't happen at Mania, it's one that's been building for a long time. Injury prevented it from happening at WrestleMania this year, even though it seems like it probably could have happened at Mania. But it's definitely going to happen at Backlash. And that is Bron Breakker and Seth Rollins and the whole thing with the Vision. They came out tonight. Paul Heyman cut a promo about Brock. And then Logan Paul cut. I don't love Logan Paul. I'm not a Logan Paul fan at all. But his promo tonight was hilarious, of him sitting there saying, I hate outsiders. I hate YouTubers coming into our space and trying to do this thing. Just all of that. I think he did such a great job with it. And then Bron Breakker came out, cut a promo. Seth came out and attacked him. The Street Profits made their return. Shout out Montez Ford. Congratulations again. But they ran off Theory and Logan Paul. And so it seems like that's, a match that we're going to head to for the tag titles. A fresh new matchup, a fresh new feud between those two teams. And then we got Bron Breakker and Seth Rollins. And I don't know where Breakker got busted open on the back of his head, but he was kind of gushing blood in this segment, and was still able to stand tall. Seth kind of got to come back a little bit. Bron Breakker went for the spear. Seth super kicked him, went for the stop, missed it, and then Breakker just speared him in half. And so it seems like this is the feud that we're heading for at Backlash. We asked the question of who is Paul Heyman going to align himself with. Well, it seems like he's going to stay with Bron Breakker for the time being, which I think is a smart move to build to this match between these two guys. We're probably going to get more than one match out of this. We're probably going to get a handful of them. I would be shocked if Breakker doesn't just win the feud outright at the end of the day, which, we've talked about before. But I think this was a great moment. I think this was a great way to keep this feud going. I think we got to play some cards to the chest. Backlash is only 3 weeks away, which is always wild to me that we have a pay-per-view that close to Mania. But we got Backlash in a couple weeks, so this is definitely going to be run back there. And I think it's going to be pretty easy to determine who's going to walk away and who's going to win that one. City Kitty in the chat says the Street Profits are back. Yes, they are in a big way. It's good when they're back. Like, I think the Street Profits are a team that a lot of people tend to just put on the side. But then when you watch them wrestle and you see what they're able to do, they're one of the best tag teams in the world today. Montez Ford is such a freak of nature when it comes to his athleticism. And, I think is one of those guys that is a tag team guy that could break out and be a single star at some point. But it's always good when the Street Profits are back. It's always good when you're able to get a fresh new feud. And so to see them and the Vision go at it together, I think is going to be really interesting. And it's going to be a great new feud for the tag titles and make the tag titles feel important once again. Because we talked about it with the women's division. We didn't really even talk about it with the tag division, but the tag division needs a new spark. They need something to really get them going, a new fresh look, a new fresh feud, something to get them going. And so maybe by the end of the year, we'll finally reunite the Lucha Brothers and have them just go on a tear through the tag division because they absolutely need a fresh new look, and the Lucha Brothers can absolutely do that. But I'm so glad, like City Kitty is, that the Street Profits are back in WWE. And then the question of the weekend has been, is Brock Lesnar really retired? And I think that's the question that a lot of people are going to be asking for a while. The way they said things tonight and the video package and leaving your boots in the ring and everything, I feel like they want to have us have the appearance that he is retired. I would be shocked if he's actually fully retired. I would be shocked if he doesn't come back for SummerSlam to have one more match, more than likely against Gunther, because that's the match a lot of people have been talking about, but it's also fits in with his gimmick and the story that he tells and what he tries to do. And so I don't believe Brock is really retired. I don't think he's fully retired. I think this is a great way to keep him away for a couple months. Because Heyman even said in his promo tonight when he was, after he ran through the whole thing with Lesnar, he was talking about the Visions night at WrestleMania. He thanked Gunther for what he did, and he said, and just let me know whenever you want that favor, and I will step in and do it for you. The favor more than likely is going to be to get Brock to come out of retirement for one last match at SummerSlam against Gunther. It's his hometown. It's where he's from. It's SummerSlam. There's a lot of history with Brock at SummerSlam. So I would be shocked again if it doesn't happen. But I do think we are at the very end of his career. I think it was just maybe they did it for the swan song of, hey, this is his last WrestleMania. He gets this big moment playing into the whole retirement, shock retirement out of nowhere. And then in the long run, coming back and putting him, out on the SummerSlam card and then having Gunther beat him and retire him straight up. I think is probably the direction we're heading. The video package they showed tonight for Brock brought back a lot of memories and a lot of moments I forgot about. I think we've seen some of his FCW stuff, but the way that he was just throwing dudes around is wild. The way that, like, the strength that man has always had and the moments that he had of beating Rock at, and to win his first WWE championship, and his WrestleMania match with Kurt Angle, and then the whole WrestleMania debacle between him and Goldberg at WrestleMania 20, and all of that stuff going on, and then his return and, being the Universal Champion for so many days and never showing up to work and starting the whole part-timer as a champion thing. There's just a lot of memories with Brock, and I'm sure, as we get closer and closer to his actual retirement, we'll dive in and talk about that more. But it's a wild thing that we're already here. It's a moment at Mania that I think a lot of people aren't going to forget anytime soon. And I was afraid that everybody was going to remember Brock's retirement and not really focus on the fact that Oba is the one to beat him. But after tonight and what we've seen, I think it's no doubt in my mind that Oba is still just fine. He's still over with the crowd. The crowd remember that more than anything else. I think that is such a big thing, and I'm so glad that that it's happening. But Brock's retirement is going to be a big deal. If it actually has happened, if that was his final match, I think it's a great way for him to go out. But I think he's got one more left in him, and I'm pretty sure we're going to see that at SummerSlam. So that's going to be a very exciting time. We'll be here to break down the whole road to SummerSlam. We're technically on the road to SummerSlam now after the end of WrestleMania. That's the next big one, depending on if you count the Money in the Bank or not. But it's crazy that we're already past WrestleMania 42. What a weekend it was. A polarizing, up and down, wild night of wrestling, a wild weekend of wrestling. The sad part is night one of WrestleMania felt a lot like a Raw after Mania. I think tonight we had 3 matches on the card, which is crazy that in a 2 hour and 45-minute show, or whatever it was, we only had 3 matches. They were longer matches, which is good, but only 3 matches is crazy. Commercial Mania was running wild this year, which I think is something that, if they're going to ask us to pay as much as they ask us to pay for the ESPN subscription, they need to stop running as many ads as they ran and start having some more wrestling, because the wrestling matches and the wrestling times were hard to get through with how few and how short some of the matches were. I mean, we're talking about matches that have been building for months and years that only had less than 10 minutes or 10 minutes to tell their story, which is why the main event, I think, of night 2 was so beautiful, because it had the time to breathe, it had the time to tell the story. And I think that's something that we need to look to from here on out. But that's going to do it. I know it's a shorter episode, but I'm running solo. There's only so much I can ramble about. The direction that we're heading in, though, is crazy for WrestleMania. Roman Reigns versus Jacob Fatu at Backlash. Cody Rhodes and CM Punk potentially happening sooner rather than later. Oba Femi being on the top of the mountain right now. He is now officially the mountain that somebody has to climb, somebody has to try to conquer, and I don't think anybody as of right now can do it. WWE is in a weird spot after Mania. They have the potential to really catch up and to really drive this thing home even more and get back to where they were a couple years ago. But they have to stay committed, and they have to have that vision and that plan to get there. We'll see if they are able to do that. City Kitty says in the chat, commercials are out of control. Listen, tonight on Raw, which is on Netflix, we had video packages to kick off the show covering both nights of WrestleMania, after we already had the Then, Now, Forever to start the show off. So video package. They go to commentary. We get Oba's entrance. We get him saying, a one-sentence promo. He drops the mic. Another video package, commercial break. So, in the first, 15 minutes of the show, we didn't really get anything substantial other than the Oba promo, which was great. But we didn't get anything else really after that. And so commercials are out of control. The ads are out of control. TKO is out of control. But that's a whole different discussion for a different day that, I'm sure Chris will want to have his opinion on and push back on a little bit at times. But it is what it is. We're right here with you. We're sitting through it with you. Hopefully you had a wonderful WrestleMania weekend. Hopefully the highs of WrestleMania brought you up and the lows of WrestleMania really just still entertained you one way or another. And tonight, while it wasn't the best, while it wasn't even, I think, the Raw after WrestleMania hasn't been what it's supposed to be in a long time. And I think tonight was another indication of that. But I think hopefully we can get back there. Hopefully we can get to where we get in the big surprises, the big moments. The crowd is on fire. Chris can probably tell you because he was there in person, so it may have sounded better, but at least how it was presented and on TV, not a great WrestleMania crowd, not a great Raw after Mania crowd. Try not to go back to Vegas for a while because I think 2 years in a row has burnt them out. And then next year we go to Saudi Arabia, which is a whole other conversation, a whole other topic. But that's it. We're here. We're past WrestleMania. We're moving on. We're heading towards SummerSlam. Thank you for being here with us tonight. Thank you for hanging out with us. Make sure, again, if you are new here, that you like, share, subscribe, do all of that fun stuff. Make sure you're back here with us. We are live after Raw every single Monday. So make sure that you are back in, tune in with us next week as we are finally past WrestleMania, but the seasons never stop here. The feuds never stop here. The shows never stop here. We'll talk about what happens on Friday. We'll talk about what happens next Monday as we get a bigger picture and hopefully a better picture of where we're heading into Backlash. And, it's a fun time. It's a great time of the year. As where we're at, we're hopefully going to keep the momentum going. We're hopefully going to keep all the fun going that we always do during the year with professional wrestling. City Kitty says WrestleMania weekend was a great time. It was. We talked about it before. Even the subpar WrestleManias are still WrestleManias, and they're still fun. Even though night one didn't feel like Mania, night two absolutely did. And I think that is what a lot of people are going to remember. I think that is the important part. But once again, thanks for hanging out with me. I'm glad that I was able to be here. Chris will be back next week with me. He is jet lagged from his trip. He stayed up all night, wasn't able to sleep much, and so he's getting much deserved rest from his trip, being our reporter on the ground in Vegas. But for Chris Belcher, who couldn't be here with me tonight, my name is Andy York. Thank you so much for tuning in to Squared Circle Radio. We are so glad you're here with us. We will catch you guys down the road.